Hello, my fellow Lashpreneurs. Getting a little slow start today, a little glitchy computer system, but I'm so excited to talk to you today about pricing. It seems to be a very hot topic for lash artists to understand how to price themselves, and everybody seems to think that it's just guessing off of their competition or pulling a number out of a hat or comparing what they think their value is and their worth is compared to another lash artist and deciding whether they should be priced higher because they're better or be priced lower because they're not nearly up to that level, or thinking I'm new to business so I should just have rock bottom pricing to try and get a ton of clients in the door. Today I'm going to tell you one strategy if you are a solo lash artist going out on your own that can help you determine at least what your break-even cost is so that you can go forward in your business to understand whether you're meeting your break-even pricing or if you're losing money every month, or if you're at the point where maybe you're making bank and you can raise your prices. All of that we're going to go over today. But first, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Tara Walsh. I'm a licensed esthetician and master lash artist. I am also a business coach, consultant, and marketing strategist for lash artists just like you. This is the show where I'm going to break down the bite-sized, step-by-step, and how-tos of running a lash business. If you like what you hear today, please share, comment, like, anything like that to let me know that you are very much involved and engaged in what we're talking about. And today we're getting into some math. So I do not want you to be like Bruce Banner trying to hold back the Hulk. I really want you to just be open-minded. I'm going to have a download worksheet for you to be able to go through the math that we go through today so you can figure it out on your own. I'm just going to explain the theory real quick, and then I'm going to walk you through what that example looks like. You can download it, listen to the replay, or listen back and then go through the worksheet to determine your own break-even cost analysis. So let's get started. Today's lesson is the path to profitability and discovering your break-even pricing. Now, the last thing I recommend anyone doing is to set your pricing based on somebody else's business, right? So they do amazing work and they charge so little, I can't possibly charge what they charge. It's a common fallacy to look at another lash artist's work and price and think that that dictates your worth and your value to your clients, or that they must be successful, so I'm just gonna monkey see, monkey do and copy what they're doing because that's clearly what's successful, right? This approach to pricing could very well put you out of business before you've ever opened your doors. You need to know what your break-even pricing is so that you are either working to get that average per client. So maybe some clients are below that break-even price and some clients are above that break-even price, but the average is that you're breaking even. Otherwise, you run into a situation where you're losing money every month, so you're unable to pay yourself for a really long time, or you're having to take on more and more clients, work 6 days a week, 12 clients a day, and yet you still feel like you're not making enough money to survive or to live the life that you want, and yet you're working your tail off. Those are usually the signs that you have not established what your break-even pricing is and that your pricing is below what your break-even is for the cost of running your business and sustaining your lifestyle. So lash businesses, or actually businesses in general, 80% of them fail within the first 18 months. That's just standard, at least here in the US, that's common for most businesses to fail within the first 18 months. And most don't make a profit for the first 2 years. So you can see why after 18 months, a year and a half, people just give up before reaching the point where they start to see some green in their business. Now, the lash artists, the beauty industry in general, when you have us as like solopreneurs, are a little bit of a caveat to that because we can be profitable within, say, 6 months of opening your business, but it can take up to 2 years as well to start seeing some real money into your business. That's just the cost of starting up a business, right? You have to go into it with the mindset that you are starting a business and be along for the ride. So it's totally expected to and normal for you to save before you start your business. It's totally normal for you to borrow money if you have to start a business. Most businesses do, but because running a lash business is a lot less expensive, like we don't have to buy a bunch of expensive equipment, we don't need really large facilities, we basically need enough space for a massage table and our lash supplies and our glue, and we're kind of good to go. Or it could be that you move in with mom and dad, or you have a side job until your lash business is at the point where it could sustain you. So the formula I'm going to work with you through today is going to give you what you need to be at to break even to then transition full-time into running a lash business. Now, if you've already started your lash business, I still want you to go through this exercise so that you're aware how close or how far off you are from your break-even pricing, because next week we're going to get into how to use your current pricing to get to where you want to be income-wise. So definitely make sure that you're coming back, because this is a two-part series. All right, so the path of profitability starts with knowing your numbers and knowing your average break-even cost per client. So how do we assess that? It's not by estimating a percentage of, okay, my lash tray, I used 100 lashes on this line and the whole tray cost me this. So per client, like that's a really messy way to do it. And if you know those numbers, great, but you're estimating around $5 to $8 per client just for the supplies. But how are you then cutting down the percentage of your electric bill and your online booking and all that? It's really messy to try and get it down that way when you're breaking up each expense during find a percentage of cost per client. So we're going to look at a whole month and then break it down and see if that doesn't give you an easier, more bite-sized way of finding out your average cost per client to break even. So what do you need to know? Let's get into money, right? You need to know your fixed costs. If you're not sure what fixed costs are, those are the costs that are the same month after month after month. They don't change. If you pay something annually, say your website hosting, you can break that up into 12 months as to what that costs you per month to have that service. This often means your utilities, sometimes if they're included in your rent, are a fixed cost. If your utilities change every month, like if your electric bill is higher during the winter because it's snowing outside and you have to run the heater all the time, or if in the summer you have to run the AC, if it varies month to month, that's a variable cost. Fixed cost is rent, it's your phone bill, it's your insurance, your booking software, website hosting, all that stuff that's consistent month to month are your fixed costs. So you need to figure out what those are for your business. If you're new and just starting out, you should have an idea of what your fixed costs would be. You can always take an educated guess, but for the most part, you'll probably know going into it what your fixed costs are going to be. If not, there's a download on my website, the Lash Biz Startup Worksheet, that'll show you kind of what you need to get started, and you can justify which one's a monthly expense or annual expense versus what's going to change. Next, you need to know what your variable costs are. So variable costs change from month to month. The perfect example of what a variable cost is lash supplies. So the amount that we order month to month changes. Some months you just need to reorder your glue. Other months you need to make a big purchase, or you saw a sale on something you've been dying to try, or you need to buy a bunch of tweezers. It's going to change from month to month. So we want to find an average of what those variable costs are. Again, if you're new, you can take an educated guess and forecast what you think your variable cost will be for lash supplies, or set a budget for what you would spend that month and don't spend over it and just have whatever else you want to order go on the next month. Say if you did, let me pull up my example real quick here. Okay, so say if you did $50 on lash supplies one month, $60 on the next month, and then you went down to $40 the following month. So if you add all of those three up together, it'd be $150. Then you're going to divide it by 3 months to get your average. So you averagely spend $50 a month on lash supplies. So that's how you can figure out your variable costs when they kind of bounce all over again. We're just going for an average. The next thing you want to figure out, take home. You actually have to live outside of your business. Most of you probably realized that you weren't paying yourself enough, or you didn't account for what your take home was. You thought, oh, if I'm charging $50 for a fill, I'm making $50 an hour. And then you go to like pay yourself and there's no money in the account because all of your expenses came out first. So you need to establish what it is, bare minimum, of what you need to take home to live. We're not talking you're, buying a Mercedes or taking lavish trips to Mexico. You're going to have to make some sacrifices when you're starting out as a business owner. So I want you to justify what is your bare minimum to live outside of your work, to cover your bills, to cover your rent, to cover your car payments, to cover, food. obviously, once we grow and once we establish our business and we start to raise our prices, we can start affording the Mercedes and the trips to Mexico. But I want to know what your break-even cost is for supporting yourself outside of your lash business. And that means you got to bust out the bank statements and the credit card statements and know what you have to pay on a loan every month. And you need to figure out what exactly it costs you to live on a month-to-month basis. That way, when you establish your pricings, you're already including what you need to pay to survive out there, so that you're not running into not being able to pay your credit card, or not being able to make car payments, or not being able to make rent, or have the power turn off, right? We need to account for all of that when it's just you and your business and you're making the money or you're not paying yourself. And then lastly, and this may or may not apply to you in the first year or two of your business, is taxes. Yes, the government wants their pay. So you do need to anticipate that you're going to have to pay taxes. Now, this is not something we're going to get into as to what percentage and all of that, because it really depends on your legal structure. This is a question for your accountant based on your specific situation. So if you are not profitable within the first year or calendar year of your business, you may not even owe taxes, but you always want to be prepared to set money aside every month so that when tax time comes, you're not taking that out of your take-home pay. Right? So do your best not to guess at these numbers. The more concrete and detailed and exact you can be, the more knowledge you have of knowing what your break-even cost is and pricing yourself accordingly. All right, so let's dive into what this looks like when we map it out. So I had it all written out, and Zoom is not cooperating and the live is not cooperating, so it may look backwards to you, it may not, but what we're going to go through is fixed expenses, variable expenses, take home, and taxes. These are just estimates I put in here. So for fixed expenses, I said for your business would be maybe about $1,300. Maybe your variable expenses are $800 a month. Maybe you want to make $2,500 take home, and your taxes would be $400. So your total monthly expenses for your business is $5,000. So we'll just use this as an example. So how do you find out what your break-even cost per client is? Well, how many days a week can you work right now? We're not talking 7, right? Let's be reasonable. Maybe you can only do 2 to 3 days a week. Maybe because you're working another job, maybe you have 5 days a week. I want you to figure out how many days a week you can work on average. Maybe some weeks it's more, maybe some weeks it's less. Just find out what the average is. Once you find out the average of how many days a week you can work, times it by 4 to get to a month of work, right? So if you work, what did I give the example? 3 days a week, and you times it by 4 weeks a month, then you get 12 days a month of working days. So we're going to figure out what your break-even cost is per day, and then we'll break it down by how many clients you can take in a day. So if you take $5,000, your monthly expenses, and you divide it by 12 days, you then get $417 a day as your break-even price that you need to make a day. So what does that look like per client? That means whether you're new or whether you're experienced, take into account the timing that it takes you to do a fill. Okay, so what we as lash artists base our pricing on is our fills, because that's our bread and butter. That's what we're doing day in, day out, consistently. When we start to get fully booked, it's because we have a bunch of returning fill or touch-up clients. We don't want to base our pricing off of full sets, because those vary, right? Sometimes we run specials on full sets. For me, full sets is the cost of becoming a client of mine. So I'm not just doubling my fill rate. If I want to appeal to a luxury client, I want them to pay the higher price to scare off those who are not willing to invest in quality. And then I can have moderate to affordable pricing for my fills if that's something that is important to me. Or I can have high priced and luxury type fills if what makes me unique is that I want to have a luxury high-end experience. So your full sets, those prices can be kind of all over the place. But again, we're determining an average. So your full sets will play into your break-even average cost per client. But we want to focus right now in figuring out the number of clients you can take, the number of fill appointments you can take in one day of work. So if it takes you an hour to do a fill client, maybe you can take 6 clients in a day and have enough time for lunch break and a little bit of a break in between each client. If it takes you 2 hours to do a fill, then you can only take maybe 3 or 4 clients in a day. Whatever number that is for you, just be reasonable. Don't say that, well, I'm available now, I'll work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and try and find your break-even cost, because that's not realistic. Let's be realistic as to what could be, not what you currently have, but what could be. Okay, so I said 5 clients a day at the $417 a day that we need to make to break even, divided by 5 clients a day, and that brings us to a total of $83.40. That is my break-even price per client. The average break-even price per client with this example is $83.40. How many of you, when you first started off, priced yourself at $80 or more dollars? Most of us don't, right? We start off, or we look at our competition who's charging $50 a client, and we think we have to be $10 less because we're not as established, maybe we're not as good, maybe they do amazing work, and so we price ourselves lower thinking that we're going to kind of scrape, you know, the bottom of the barrel, people who don't want to pay the $50. So if we're charging $40 for a fill and yet our break-even cost per client is $83.40, where is the remaining $43.40 coming from? No, this doesn't mean that you have to start your pricing out at what your break-even is. It means that you have to be creative in finding the right average. So if you charge $40 for a fill and you charge $120 for a full set, if you have 1 client a day that comes in at $120 and 1 client a day who comes in at $40, you're actually breaking, the average for that day is $80 per client. So your full sets are going to play into that. Maybe you add on brow waxes at $20 and you try to upsell a client on that. Maybe you upsell the 5 clients that day with a $5 lips mask as an upsell. So over 5 clients and $5, that's an extra $25 for that day. Maybe it's, what is the other example I was thinking of? We did full sets, brow wax, fills. Maybe you do raise your prices in about a month or so if you haven't done so in a while to try and get yourself closer to that break-even cost. And maybe it just means that you have to work another job until your business is earning enough per client for you to then transition over to being full-time. And that's often the case that I recommend when you're just starting out, is don't throw all your eggs in the Lash Biz basket if you don't have a strategy to get there and be profitable right away, because you're just taking money out of your take-home pay. All right, so I hope that was kind of some light bulbs for you. Let me just make sure I covered all of that. All right, so what's the flawed thinking of basing your prices on your competitors? They're not going to come pay your rent. They're not going to come pay your mortgage if you don't make your bills for that day. So I want you to not look at what everybody else is doing, and I want you to focus on what your break-even cost is, both for your business and for your take-home, to make sure that you're covering your expenses. Now, if you'll join me next week, we're going to get in how to take your current pricing and figure out what you need to be doing a day to reach your goal income level for that month. This is where we start to get into the wants versus the needs. Now today, for you to get your hands on the break-even cost analysis worksheet that I've created for you to come up with your own plan of your fixed variable take-home taxes, all of that, working out your break-even average cost per client, I want you to go to lashpreneur.com/episode3 and you'll download the worksheet. And then I want you to share with me, you can either email me, message me on Facebook, or leave a comment under this video with how far off you were, either positive or negative, from your average break-even per client. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this was informational and educational to you. Please feel free to like, share, comment, tag, or subscribe, and I will see you soon. Have a good one.